The second chapter is utility analysis. Utility is the want satisfying power of any commodity. If a particular commodity can satisfy my want, then particular commodity has utility for me. If it doesn't, then the particular thing has no utility for me. So, the discussion about this is further detailed we are going to do in this chapter. So, from exam point of view, the question which is asked is about the features of utility. Features of utility are many, so it is very difficult for students to remember. So, we made a short form for this, that is rest, push, dim. So, I am going to tell you all the features, but you have to remember this word or you have to remember this thing, that is rest, push and dim. R stands for relative. Utility is always in relation to time and place. As time changes and as place changes, utility for a particular commodity changes. For example, in US you might have a utility for warmer cloth, but in India there is no utility for a warmer cloth. So, as time changes and as place changes, utility for a particular commodity diminishes or changes. The second is utility is ethically neutral. E stands for ethically neutral. That means it has nothing to do with good or bad. The utility for a gun for a soldier is as important as the utility for a gun to a robber. So, the product is same, that is gun, but utility for both the parties are different. One is serving the country and one is a terrorist, but the utility for a particular commodity is ethically neutral. The third is S, that utility is subjective. It differs from person to person. My utility for a particular commodity might differ with your utility for a particular commodity. As per our age group is different, as per our gender is different, so utility also different. So, we discuss RES, that is relative, ethically neutral and subjective. The next is push. P stands for pleasure. Utility actually differs from pleasure. There are many things which provide you pleasure but actually has no utility for you. Also, there are many things which has utility for you, but it do not give pleasure. For example, medicine. No one likes to take the medicine. It does not give you pleasure, but it has utility for you and for your health. Then the second point is usefulness. Utility also differs from usefulness. Many a things has usefulness for you and utility for you, but many a things has usefulness for you but has no utility for you. For example, say studying. Studying, you think that has no utility for you, but actually it is useful for your career. Then third is satisfaction. Utility actually differs from satisfaction. Satisfaction is the end result of after consumption of any commodity. For example, I am very hungry and I went to a nearby restaurant and have a food. Okay, after consumption of the food, I can actually say that the particular food was good, average or bad. So, satisfaction derives after consumption of a commodity, but utility derives as soon as I want certain commodity. So, when I am hungry, I have a utility for the food, but after consumption of food, I can say whether I am satisfied or not. The next is H, that is hypothetical concept. Utility is completely hypothetical concept. Okay, it actually differs from person to person. It cannot be proved. It is yes or no, and it is different for different people. So, that is your push. P stands for pleasure, U stands for usefulness, S stands for satisfaction and H stands for hypothetical. And the last three letters you are supposed to remember is dim, that is D stands for demand. Utility is the basis for demand. Since a person is having demand utility for a particular commodity, then only he can raise demand in the market. So, it is the basis of aggregate market demand. Then I, that utility depends upon the intensity of want. How much I want a particular commodity. My utility is direct in relation to my intensity to have that commodity. If a person is very thirsty, the utility for water will be immense for that person. So, it is in relation to my intensity of acquiring or having a particular commodity. And the last one is M, that is some commodities have multiple use. So, utility is also multiple. For example, if we take the example of milk. So, milk can be used for drinking, for tea, coffee, chena, sweets, paneer, ghee, dahi, many things. So, one commodity but has a multi-purpose use. So, utility also differs. So, these are the features of utility. Then the second thing in the chapter is about the forms of utility, okay, types of utility. So, there is a form utility. Form utility is nothing but a particular thing when converted or change its form, it becomes useful. For example, log. Log of wood has no utility, but when it is converted into furniture, that furniture has utility for you. Then second is place utility. when a place of a particular thing changes, the utility suddenly arise. For example, sand. Sand has no utility at the seashore, but that particular sand, if it is used for construction site, then it has an immense utility. So, as soon as the place of a particular thing changes, its utility derives. The third is service utility. Service utility is basically in relation to the professionals. For example, the utility of a doctor in a hospital, the utility of a lawyer in a courtroom, utility of a chartered accountant for filing your tax return. So, that is service utility. The next is utility knowledge, utility of knowledge or knowledge utility. When we acquire the knowledge to do a particular thing, then we acquire the knowledge utility. So, after studying economics, you have a utility, that is the value of money. So, that is knowledge utility. The next is possession utility. Possession utility, basically when I possess something, then a particular commodity has a utility for me. So, if I possess jewelry, diamond, gems, then that thing has utility for me. So, that is possession utility. And the last one is time utility. Time utility, as the name suggests, it differs from time to time. For example, the utility of a blood or oxygen is way higher in hospital rather than at your home. So, the time utility is particularly related to a particular situation or particular time. The next part and the important part, which from the 8 marks question, is law of diminishing marginal utility. So, that we are going to do, you have to do it very thoroughly, because most probably chances is that you are going to get this law in the board's examination. So, the law of diminishing utility, that is law of DMU, the law was actually propounded by Professor Gaussen, but it was discussed by Professor Alfred Marshall, and that is why we call it as Marshall's law. So, it was discussed by Professor Alfred Marshall in the year 1980 in his book Principle of Economics. What Alfred Marshall said, that other things being equal, the additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase in the stock of a thing diminishes with every increase that he already has. So, this is a complicated definition. Now, let us understand the simpler version of it. It is basically, for example, you are very hungry and your mother is serving you food. So, since you are very hungry, the utility of the first chapati or the first roti will be immense. Then the utility of the second roti will be less, third less, fourth less, and fifth you might say, I do not want to eat now, because with every increase in the stock that you are consuming, the utility for a particular commodity is diminishing. Why? Because utility arises because of the want, and the want was hunger. As soon as you ate the first chapati, your hunger is satisfied, and the next chapati will give you lesser utility. So, that is the basically law given by Alfred Marshall. Since it is a law, and since the law is of microeconomics and it is based on certain assumptions. The first assumption, that a person should be rational. In economics, rationality means value for the money. A person will spend to that level when he is feeling, okay, the money which I am spending is giving me some utility. So, that is a rationality. The second assumption of the law is utility is measured in numbers, that is cardinal utility. So, whatever you are getting satisfaction, you are giving number to it. For example, after eating first chapati, you can say, okay, I am 10 satisfied. After eating second chapati, I am 8 satisfied. So, you are giving number to the measurement. The third is homogeneity. Homogeneity means that every unit which you are consuming should be same. That is, if you are eating roti, then the next unit will be roti. If you are eating paratha, then the next unit will be paratha. The fourth assumption is continuity, that is no break. You are eating roti or paratha continuously. So, there is no break in between. The fourth is reasonability. That means the amount which you are consuming or the product which you are consuming should be reasonable in size, neither too small nor too big. If the product is so small, then it will take many a time consumption to reach at the utility. But if the product is too large, then utility may arrive at the first consumption. For example, you are very thirsty and you want to drink water. If I give you a water spoonful, then utility might arise at 100 unit of spoon or 150th unit of spoon. But if I give you 1 liter bottle or 2 liter water of bottle, then at that time after drinking, utility will immediately finishes, that is your thirst will be quenched. So, the product which you are using should have a reasonable size. The next feature is constancy, that means you are constantly using the commodity. There is no change in your preference, taste, habit or anything. you are constantly using that commodity. For example, after eating second roti, you are not going to ask your mother to give you paratha. So, whatever commodity you are using, there is no change in that. The next one is single want. At a particular time, you have only one want, that is single want, and the product which you are using should be divisible into smaller numbers. So, these are the assumption of law of DMU. Now, exception to law of DMU, when actually after consumption you do not feel satisfied or utility does not end. So, what are the various exceptions to law of DMU? The first exception to law of DMU is basically hobby. If a person is having a hobby of reading books, then a person will never be bored. So, he will read as many as books possible, but he will never be bored. Then if a person is miser, then the utility for money for that person is never going to end. With every penny he want to save more and more. So, that is the second exception. The third is addiction. If a person is addicted to certain commodity like alcohol, like tobacco, like tea or coffee, then every other cigarette or every other glass of alcohol is giving to give him more utility. Then the need for power and the need for money, it never ends. Every time you have more and more power and more money, the utility for next is more. So, these are the exceptions to law of DMU. Further, law of DMU is discussed through this diagram.